Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of today's podcast. Today, we're going to be talking to Phil all about filmmaking, his journey in filmmaking. And I guess, Phil, I was going to ask you specifically like how you got started, but I think why should someone specifically care about filmmaking as a whole or video as a whole right now, would you say?
Well, it seems to be that video is everywhere, and it's a really powerful way to sell or to get a story across and just to generally get a message. And I think people are, the fact that we've just at our fingertips got video content that we can just scroll through and on tap, it seems. I just think it's probably the most effective way to get a message across.
Do you think that filmmaking either will continue to change and or has already changed with the advent of AI and equivalent? Like, to give you some context, I was watching a video earlier today all about the fact that like junior editors and getting into filmmaking, like we're both like I would say probably more established, but if you're getting into filmmaking now, it's potentially quite challenging in respect to like those you don't necessarily have those junior roles because they are being commoditized or replaced by AI.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And I was at an event the other day, and they drew attention to the fact that, as you described, those junior level roles are being filled with AI. But what's interesting is that those at the latter parts of their careers, once they disappear, the experts that actually know and have the knowledge, it's going to be very difficult for juniors coming in to know whether they can even trust AI, because they haven't got some old fogey next to them that they can vet it and check if it's correct. But in terms of AI, it is a big question mark at the moment for me. However, I'm starting to see whenever I speak to people about LinkedIn, they're frustrated at the fact that every post seems to be AI, and I do question whether we'll get to a point where we truly won't know what's real and what's not, and so people will need further proof on and evidence as to what's real. And I think what will happen in terms of marketing is that people will just start meeting up more, and so you might find that video loses its impact because we just won't believe it. Perhaps these kinds of conversations that we're having now will become a better way to market, but it's really hard to know, and it is a worry, I'll be honest. And I think it's important to embrace the technology and not get left behind, but I feel like it could go either way.
As I say, for me, I think it's kind of one of those things where you've got to kind of use it to like leverage what you're doing, but also be aware of where it's going. So then you can maybe pivot, change, adapt what you're then doing as a filmmaker, what you're doing as a marketer, etc., either for your clients or for you. Yeah. I agree with your like the perspective or the analysis, I suppose, that people are more pushing towards in-person events and more community-based stuff, because I've noticed that with my own in-person event, but also in general, people really seem to, I guess, resonate more in some ways with in-person connection as AI becomes more dominant. But I guess maybe the longer-term thought process is like, is there a can we marry the two in the respect to like actually a lot of the stuff and a lot of the grunt work will always be done by AI, and does it maybe cross out? Maybe the line is that maybe when it doesn't cross over into like the creative stuff, I guess, do you think could it replace the creative thought process? Because I don't personally, I think it will struggle to do that, and if it can't, then we're actually fine as filmmakers. I think we'll be just kind of optimized by AI in some ways.
Yeah, there always has to be in some form some sort of director or operator, and I just think what will change the most is the location at which we're doing our job. So rather than like today going out and filming in person, it might be that we're sat behind a desk and we're the ones providing the prompts, but we can only really get our heads around what we know today. And if you consider how advanced it is already, give it 20 years, it's just going to be so radically different. And I do believe that it will be advanced enough to do all of the creative legwork, but it's just whether we as a race will choose to accept that or not. And I think that's where we are unique, is that we'll be emotionally driven, and and morally driven as well. I don't think, and people will buy into it and will accept that we're not needed anymore, and it will be automated. And I think something will come through, and it will it will mean that AI doesn't have the same impact as it does. But at the moment, embracing it and helping and using it as a support mechanism is really useful. And I'm using it all the time. Chat GPT is just, I'm every single day. Sometimes I'm using it for personal therapy. Sometimes I'm using it for my work, and I'm finding it's helping me to speed up the process, but it's not replacing me, because I still have to be the one to then decide, is this decision it's made or suggestion made, is it suitable?
Yeah, I agree, and I think I don't know if it will ever, because the problem with like large language models, right, is if they start embedding mistakes and they have mistakes in them, then they'll learn from those mistakes and then repeat them, right?
Yeah.
And I think to an extent that's kind of why I'm maybe slightly more skeptical of whether it will become this all-seeing power. Is it going to be in a world where we have it and we use it? Absolutely, but I don't think it will. I'm kind of. It might be famous last words, right? But I'm skeptical that it will get to the position where it can completely replace a human, right? Will there be elements of, like, I can see a world in 5-10 years where the camera we use for work or the camera we have in our webcams have AI features built in, right? They can. I mean, that's what we're already seeing that with iPhones and etc.
Yeah.
When it comes to like beauty filters and etc. And I guess in some ways the vulnerability, maybe if you're already in the beauty industry, I can see as a specific industry that will potentially struggle with this, because they already try to beautify non-reality, if that makes sense. The thing that AI will struggle with, for example, is like the detail on my beard, for example, at the moment, right? And I think as we move forward, I guess the question comes is like, is that a regulatory thing, do you think, of like stopping it from just completely obliterating like the entire industry as a creative industry? Or is it actually just going to be people will eventually just say, yeah, it was kind of a gimmick and we kind of use it as a quote work, but actually we're going to draw a line and sort of say, well, we're not going to, it's not going to be used for this. Do you think?
I feel like we are in such a capitalist society that sadly I feel that the need to create revenue will be so strong that I don't even think, I think it will just happen and we won't even notice. And for people like you and I, we know a world before AI, whereas in 20, 30 years, the next generations coming through won't know any different. And so it will just be part of their life. So I think that's when we'll notice the biggest difference. But I do feel strongly that we will just require that real human interaction, and for as long as we don't know, we'll crave it. It's just hardwired into us as a species to want real connection. So I do think in some form we'll seek it out, and I reckon a new art form will come about from it. I don't know, or it might be, as we see quite commonly now, things that are retro coming back in. It's because even the younger generation are looking at simpler times. My daughter is 13 and she's taking a break from her mobile because she doesn't like what it represents in her life. And I think that's an incredibly mature choice that she's made. So it could go either way. It's so difficult to know. But what I do know is that we can't be those that turned our nose up at, back 100 years ago, the car versus the horse, because it's just inevitable. And you have to be, rather than just rolling with it, what I'm realizing is that I still feel like I'm behind the times, whereas what we should be doing is being a pioneer. We should be the ones perhaps steering the direction of AI, making use of it, and rather than sitting back and waiting for it to dictate our life, we can be the ones to say, well, this is how I plan to use it. And we can make choices now that then steers the direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think for me, the key is whether you're in the driving seat, right, or not, which is kind of what you're implying there. But I mean, I guess like getting it back to basics, I mean, a lot of what we do is tell stories, right? I mean, how did you get started in either filmmaking or like telling stories as a whole?
So I went to university, started in 2004, and I did a 3-year course, video production in Gloucestershire. And it wasn't until the last year that I really started to get a sense that I could direct. And so I did that in the final semester and really enjoyed it. And then I left university and spent 5 years working for a video and photography studio, worked my way up to producer level. So I wasn't really telling stories, but I was starting to get a sense as to what it meant to create content for clients, understanding budgets, their needs and things like that. And then I set up my own company in 2012. And that's when I started to get that itch and that need to want to make content for myself, or to prove that I was more than just a corporate video producer. So I made a music video in 2014, which was my first ever real creative, in inverted commas, personal project after university. And then I made a Christmas film called Love is a Gift in 2014, which went on and did very well, oddly, when I re-released it in 2018. And that's when I started to get a bit of a reputation for being a storyteller and a director. So since then, it's always been in my head, this sense that I want to tell impactful stories. When I'm doing my day-to-day job as a head of creative, it's a catch-22. So I've got this desire and need to tell impactful stories, but sometimes the projects don't need it, or they don't need the amount that I want to put into those projects. So I have to be careful not to overinvest and drain myself emotionally on every single project. But I do have a need to, at least once or twice a year, tell a story that I feel resonates with my viewers.
Do you think a lot of people struggle, like, I guess in some ways they're always in the rat race, especially as filmmakers, right? They're in that corporate kind of revolving wheel of, I need to create something, I need to create something, I need to create something for a client. And maybe they don't step back and say, well, why should I create something for myself? I mean, is that something you've always done, or was that just to like sharpen your craft and lean into that more creative side that maybe didn't necessarily fit the client's vision, would you say?
When I started making
kind of the reasoning behind, I guess, why you still create, or why you did create your own stuff, rather than, because I guess in some ways some people would say, well, you don't make direct money from it, so why would you invest the time, energy and resources in doing so, right?
Yeah, it was a twofold thing. So when I made the film, it was because I was, I guess, sick to death of doing interviews, and I wanted to demonstrate that I had more to give. So there was a personal need there, but it was a marketing piece. I truly believed that if I made this Christmas film, it was going to promote my company and push us into new territories. I wanted to create TV adverts and music videos, and I wanted to be paid to do them. So I thought, well, if I just make something that demonstrates my capabilities, well, then I'm doing that's the best thing I can do. And it's paid off. It took 4 years for that film to gain the traction that it did, but I've had some successes off the back of it. So I think it's really crucial that creatives don't just sit back and wait for the brief to come in from the client. They play their part in steering the direction of their careers, and then that influences who then approaches them and the briefs they receive. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. They'll receive the briefs that they want to receive because they're demonstrating what they can and can't do.
Do you think, I guess, I mean, that's always been an approach that I've had, which is like, if I want to make the step into a specific area of work, I need to kind of do spec ads or free ads or etc. around that thing, or a personal project to sort of prove, I guess, in some ways to that industry, for me to have the right to then potentially pitch for stuff. Do you think business owners, creatives, I don't want to use the term they're lazy, because I think that's it's kind of up your own arse kind of opinion of saying that, but I guess the approach could be like, if their back's against the wall, maybe they don't appreciate that marketing is the understanding, or maybe they don't have the runway financially to think about what we're doing in 3 months' time, right? Because a project like that, I haven't done one to that scale, but I expect it didn't exactly take a week, right? I mean, did you specifically plan like, oh, I've got this 3-week window and I know I'm going to be good for client work, etc., and then make the decision to do it? Or was it in a down period? Because I think sometimes we can go into this spiral of, oh, I'm just going to go get a job, or, oh, I'm going to play video games and sort of wait around and wait for the phone to ring, right?
Yeah. For me, so Love is a Gift, the Christmas film, I was on a run and the idea came to me, and it was just before Christmas. I think it was early December, so I was quite late in the day to get something made, but I didn't hang around. So it was a Sunday, I ran home, literally sped up to get home to write it, and then I'm pretty sure it was the Tuesday that we just made it. So I'm very impulsive, which is a good and a bad thing, but I don't like to hang around. When I get excited about something, I just want to get it made. And I think that's the best way to be, especially as a creative, because The moment you pause, you start to second guess, and you start to worry about, will it be successful, or will people like it? Is this right timing for me? And then you just end up talking yourself out of it. And there's a danger as well with the second guessing, is that you start to lose. When I was running, I wasn't thinking about who was watching it. I was thinking about the story I wanted to make, and it was all coming from a deeper level. It's dangerous to get into a place where you start thinking about how people will consume it, because you lose your identity a little bit. And I do think, as a creative, especially if it's a project you're not being paid for, you need to be brutally in line with what it is, what your voice is trying to say, and not be swayed. And I think as creatives as well, we're all incredibly unique, and there's an opportunity there to do something brand new, rather than recycling what might have been successful by others. So in terms of fitting things in, I have to be really mindful, because I've got a job that's full-time and I need to squeeze things in there. But if I really believe in it, I'll make it happen. I think if you're so passionate about something, you make it happen, don't you? And I guess, yeah, brutally, if you don't, you've only got yourself to blame.
Would you have done it if there was absolutely no guarantee, or absolutely, like, the likelihood actually in general was that you probably wouldn't make any money off it or get any more projects off it? Would you still made it, do you think, in hindsight now?
It's a really interesting question, because at the time I didn't know, but I still made it. But yeah, there was always that hope that something good would have come of it. So if someone said to me this would be a waste of time, truthfully, I probably wouldn't have made it. And I'm aware of that. That's something that it's a drawback, in a sense that you could argue I should be making stuff just for me. But let's not forget that I'm doing this for a career. I want progression, but also there has to be a viewer at the end of it. We're broadcasters. We're creators of content that has to be consumed. If no one's watching it, then you're purposeless. So I am mindful of that, but I try not to let that be the driver. It's a strong part of it, and I'm aware of it, and I've actually had to work through that, because external validation is something I do seek. But I'm better these days. And actually, the film I made last year was the first one I truthfully made it for myself. I wasn't conscious of whether people would enjoy it or not. I truly felt this story was strong, and I was working with an actress who I knew would be able to help me tell that story, and I just wanted to make it. But I would be lying to suggest that if no one had watched it, would I have been disappointed? Of course I would have.
I think there's a difference, in my view, between whether you'd be disappointed and whether you would have still done it. Because I think in the act of doing it, you develop your own skill in being able to create a piece like that. So there's benefit there. Number two, maybe you haven't given it the timeline yet. Maybe you haven't actually marketed the film, right? Because I think sometimes when we look at filmmaking as a whole, the short film genre is maybe something that I would say is probably kind of prone to this. Filmmakers look into, I want to make this perfect piece, I want to make this amazing short film, or amazing feature film, or amazing music video, whatever it ends up, the product ends up being. But you don't necessarily, in my experience at least, on average, until you specifically think about it and you really plan it properly, I think you should personally plan the marketing of how to get the right people, or people in general, to see the thing you're going to create first. And I'll give you an example. So I'm doing an event on probably by the time this comes out, it would have already happened, but on the 11th of September. And my plan wasn't, let's film or plan out everything I'm going to do in the event, like piece by piece by piece. My plan was, let's build the marketing. How do I want to market it? How do I want to get the word out that I'm doing it? And then I'll sort of figure out what I do in the event after the fact.
Yeah.
Do you think, to phrase it into a question, do you think filmmakers, people in general, especially like solo operators, video production companies, maybe less or so, but especially solo operators or people who are starting to get into the space, maybe they don't look at that marketing piece enough? Do you think?
Massively, yeah. And I do think it's a missed opportunity as well. I've worked with many production companies. I've had my own, and there's a lack of strategy behind the content that's being suggested, and thought as to who's watching it and why, and how does that fit amongst a much broader marketing plan. And so thankfully now I'm in a broader creative role, and that's exactly what we have to do. And video is just part of the puzzle. And that's been a real eye opener for me, because video was always my world. But now I've realized it's not the be all and end all. There's so much more that surrounds it. And so I do feel that production companies should be way more vocal, or should be understanding of that broader marketing plan, so that when they're pitching ideas, it's not just, well, this sounds nice, let's hope for the best, because the client deserves more than that. So that is a trap that solo shooters, and actually lots of production companies that are well established, fall into. They focus in on just that one particular project they've been asked to produce, but they're not thinking broader than that. And I do think clients should demand that as well. It's really important.
Do you think that would be a way for us to protect us from like the future of our income, the future of our business, the future of our career from AI to an extent, if we focus on that strategic side?
Potentially. However, ChatGPT is incredibly strong at coming up with marketing plans and content strategies. But again, there has to be somebody, I suppose, that controls it. That I question whether a business owner would have the time, I suppose, to be thinking, well, what is my marketing plan? What strategy am I going to be putting into this campaign, especially if there's lots of campaigns? So yeah, that's a really good argument there. If video producers can get on board with that and bridge the gap, so that perhaps you don't want to get rid of marketing agencies altogether, but for those smaller projects where they just need a video or a suite of videos, yeah, that's a really good way to add value. And whether they charge for it or not, I don't know. But then a client or a customer would come to them seeking that value and recommend them.
Because for me, when I saw, and I've been very honest in content before, I'll be very honest with you and everyone listening. I mean, I saw what AI was doing, and I saw what AI was becoming capable of, and I'm seeing some of the stuff coming out of Google VO and etc. And I was like, shit. All right, was the honest truth. And then I was like, actually, hold on. There is, and that's kind of why I focus on that middle ground, because with the strategic side, because I think everyone wants to chase the golden goose, right? Everyone wants the large projects. Everyone wants the big paychecks, etc., etc.
Yeah.
In the years of experience I have personally, they only happen if you can be ROI focused. And for those who don't know, ROI means return on investment, and it's basically just focusing on, because at that point, if you can, no one can ever guarantee like a strong ROI, right? You can't. But what you can do is you can stack the odds in your favor, right? So something that I'm trying to do a lot of at the moment is be very omnipresent in my marketing, right? Like this is the first one that was streamed, right? I'll be curious to see where the podcast is in a year when it comes to either the quality of streams, how I stream, how I record it, etc. But the key for me is to either utilize strategies from either older content to distribute on other discoverability platforms to give me the opportunity to potentially reach a larger audience for me personally, and or potentially everything I'm experimenting with, everything I'm trying to move forward with, I can then, when I work with a client, I can say, well, actually, this is working for me. Have you considered doing this, this, and this? I mean, is that also, I guess, part of the argument or part of the thing you would personally say about why someone should make a music video, should make a short film, should make their personal documentary, their personal project, etc.? Not necessarily about them, but they should make that personal thing that they're not necessarily getting paid for, would you say?
Sorry, I'm just trying to link that back to how you've just what you were talking about.
Yeah, so I guess the question that could be phrased there is like, is there a byproduct of, so in your case it was a music video, right? In my case it's getting better at my own marketing. I'm constantly trying to adapt to what I'm doing. So looking at other opportunities to potentially distribute content if it's just a distribution challenge, but also how can I do other content that potentially adds value to an audience?
Yeah, I mean, arguably then you're kind of looking at yourself like a client, I suppose, aren't you? Rather than, that one big shiny video or whatever it is, asset that you think will win everybody over and go viral. Like that's the term that everyone seems to sway towards. Like, will it go viral? It's like, well, it's impossible to gauge that. But yeah, if you can demonstrate how you can add value across multiple platforms, or if you've created content to then repurpose it and recycle, then that's definitely going to help you. But I've never really thought about that, to be honest, because I'm guilty of just coming up with ideas and making it and then moving on. It's a real short attention span that I have for my own content, but drawing up your own marketing plan is sounds like a great shout. I feel like we should be having a conversation offline so you can be mentoring me in order to get myself there.
I mean, I don't know whether I'm just unique in the way I think, right? But I've always treated and continue to treat Brunton Media as the highest paying client, right? Now, the reason why I do that is because it allows me to be what I believe and where I am as the cutting edge of what I know is working in marketing, and then using video as a vehicle to do that. And I think for me, that's maybe one of the reasons why maybe I'll win a project over someone else, for example, right? But you've been very fortunate to work with some quite well-known names, right? One of which being Lewis Capaldi. I mean, how did that kind of come about? Because I think, especially maybe starting out people, they look at that and go, "Oh my god, wow, that's such a great opportunity." I mean, if you don't mind, just how did you sort of get that gig? Did you like put it into tender? Like, did someone reach out? Like, how did that all work?
It's going to annoy you because I was just very lucky. I didn't have to do much. Well, so my Christmas film re-released in 2018. It went viral, and I got a lot of press coverage. Then I was asked by Good Morning Britain to make some content for them, and I went on TV again, and that was broadcast live, which was incredible. And then I was approached by a director agent, and she started to toy with the idea of representing me as a director. But at the same time, what I didn't realize was behind the scenes, she was putting me forward for music videos, and one of them was Lewis Capaldi. And so from my perspective, I didn't know this, so all I had was an email from Lewis's manager saying, "We've seen your work, we love what you do, would you be up for a conversation with Lewis to talk about creating a video together?" So I actually then had a phone call with Lewis himself, and this was all before any of his songs had gone to #1, so he was quite an unknown name. And we chatted about a concept, and then over Christmas, I didn't hear anything. And we're talking 3 weeks where I just heard nothing. So I just thought, well, that's not happening now, is it? And then they reached out again. And so I did have to put a treatment forward, which is a document that details how I'm going to approach the music video as a director. And they loved it and bought into it. So very quickly, I'm pretty sure it was like mid-January, we got the green light, and then we were filming early February. So it was crazy turnaround. So I want to say I was very fortunate because I didn't have to do much legwork, but at the same time, I went out there and made stuff for myself. And even though it was 4 years later, it did exactly what I hoped it would do, which is to demonstrate my capabilities.
I think that's a very key example of you make your own luck, right? Like, there could be in a process someone comes to you and says, well, actually, you got lucky by getting on TV, and then you got seen, and then da-da-da-da, right? Or you could look at it from the other perspective and say, well, actually, you had an idea on your run, you executed upon the idea, and you took the risk of, to be honest, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could have got like 5 views, and you could have, in theory, been a laughing, oh, look, you put all this time and ever, ha, right? But in reality, what actually happened was it took a while, from my understanding, it took a while, but then it went quite viral, and then that got you the right attention of the right people, which is exactly what we want in marketing, right? In a nutshell. And I think sometimes, especially maybe people who listen to this, hopefully will take that as an example to say and have permission to actually do those projects that you're like, yeah, but this is a massive time sink. Yeah, but this is actually So for me, I think you make your own luck, and that's always what I've believed.
Yeah.
And it sounds quite egotistical to say, but the reason is because you can do work now that can then showcase and highlight, and that's why I treat my marketing in the way I treat my marketing, because every single time I'm live, every single time I'm moving forward, my video or my live stream might only get 2 views, but you don't know who those 2 people are, right? Yeah. And then in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, they might actually be the next big client. They might actually be, because they might have watched your progression and watched you tinker and watched you try and watched you fail, and then actually, hold on, he got back up and he did that, and then etc. I mean, how have you dealt with failure? Is it just part of the process for you?
I'm trying to, I don't mean this to sound weird, but I'm trying to reflect on when I can consider myself having failed. And I don't know whether that suggests to me that I'm continually growing, or I've just been very lucky, and had a great experience in my career. The film Love is a Gift, I released it in 2014, and it only it got a few likes and watches on the Facebook notice board in Tewkesbury. And you could argue that that could have been considered a failure. But I think because the position I was in was that anything was better than nothing, I had no expectations. But I also wanted to relate to what you were saying about the waiting game. It's the same for brand. With brand messaging, it takes a long time, I think, to build a brand. And my example is a really good. I've built my own brand, haven't I? It took 4 years for the right people to see it, and it then took a further 2 years for me to get an incredible opportunity to work with an Australian company called Memories. And they'd been having conversations about me for 2 years where they would talk about video and they were mentioning my name in the meeting rooms. I didn't obviously know this. And then 2 years down the line, so that's 6 years on from the film being made in the first place, I then got reached out. They reached out to me and offered me a 2-year role. So it is really important to just be patient, I think, but not chase the quick wins. It's very common, as you probably know this yourself, that you've got the financial directors thinking, well, what's the return that I'm going to see next week? And it's really hard to be able to say to them, well, I can't promise you a return, but as experts in marketing, we are very confident that this will gain the traction that you're looking for. But this is where data comes in really handy, because if you can demonstrate that you've done it before, then they're much more willing to take a leap of faith. And I think, again, as video production companies, which they don't tend to do, they need to be desperately clawing any form of data that they can get to show that what they've created actually had an impact. And without that, it's just pointless. And I've been in those rooms where I'm saying, yeah, I feel so great about this idea, but truthfully, in my head, I'm like, I don't know if it's going to work. I hope it does, but I didn't feel confident in that. So now we're really hungry for data, because it just gives us that extra bit of confidence to be able to say, well, check this out. We've done it before. I reckon we're going to do it again.
Yeah. And I guess in some ways, it sounds really weird to say, but sometimes the litmus test is turn off stuff, right? Like, let's say, for example, you've got a client, and maybe you're not in the position to say this or do this, but like, I've had it previously with clients. I'm sure I'll have it again with clients where they're like, well, what's the ROI? We're paying you all this money, etc. Like, we haven't made any direct sales from it. And I'm like, okay, right, let's break that down. So you haven't got a trackable outcome necessarily. Okay, we can add something trackable into the video to see QR code, discount code, etc. Right? B, we can also look at it as a top of funnel understanding of, if you're consistent and you're consistently having a load of visibility, actually it's then not actually going to directly actually give you the ROI as in the sale, because it's not designed to do that. What it's designed to do is get you seen by a load of new customers that then take 3, 6, 12, 18 months to then convert. But then actually, and I guess the issue, or the thing that marketing and sales always has, is sales always gets the credit for the sale, even though arguably 70% of the work was done by the marketing, right?
Yeah.
And I think as video creators, that's why we need to specifically structure our proposals, like how we work with clients, to be, I guess, in some ways, for them to understand. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to 100% like keep the client forever, or you're going to keep the retainer, or people are going to understand the content, because there is a window of time, unfortunately or fortunately, depending how you look at it, where you will just, like, you've added the value you can. Right? Like, when they've got the story videos, they've got this, they've got that. Maybe they don't need the ongoing support. Maybe they don't see it as valuable as they did, say, a year ago. And actually, maybe you've grown as well. And I think, just building off what we were discussing about, like, the failure thing, I've always been in the view, you either succeed or you learn. You don't technically failure. Yes, it exists. Yes, the word exists. But it's not something to focus on, because for me, if you fail, it's because you did something wrong. You should take self-accountability.
Yeah.
To phrase it into a question, though, in your career and your experience, do you think people, either you personally, should have taken more self-accountability in the past, or do you think more people should do as a whole? And do you think they would have a better outcome when it comes to what they're looking to do with their business, potentially?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it goes back to what I said about seeking external validation. I think if you're constantly measuring your success of other people's metrics that come from your external viewer, then you aren't taking any accountability. It's just becomes a bit of a blame game. But it's totally agree with what you've said about failure being learnings as opposed to actually deemed a failure. And it's quite empowering to hear you say that, and for me to reflect on the fact that I cannot pinpoint a time in my 20-year career where I consider myself having failed, and that's actually the first time I've reflected on that. So that's a big win for me today to be able to feel quite proud of that. But yes, we're all in charge of our destiny, and I think we should be taking accountability. And if there are moments where things don't quite go the way that we planned, well, we just reflect and move forward, don't we? And it's the same with all aspects of life, relationships, and just personal stuff. It's every obstacle is just it's something you can look back on in later life and almost be grateful that it happened, because it just gave you some further clarity. That's how I try to see things anyway.
No, I completely agree. And I think, we talked a little bit before we jumped on the actual show, and I said that 2024 was really difficult, and I look in hindsight now, and I blame myself for why it was difficult. Right now, some people would say, "Well, that's a bit harsh, that's a bit mean," but it allowed me to understand what I was doing wrong, and now I can look in hindsight and I can look back 6 months and go, "Okay, well, the reason why I'm where I am today is because of the work I did 3 to 6 months ago." Right, in regards to marketing and output. So the thing that people struggle with, clients and like me and potentially you as well, is we do a load of actions. The analogy that's always used here is like the gym analogy, right? You show up, you do a good workout, cool, sick, but I look the same. Okay, we'll go again tomorrow. Right, cool, sick, do a good workout, cool, feels great. I still look the same. Repeat. There is a day though where that compounding effect will get to the point where you actually see results, right? And that's then a motivator, of course. But I guess in some ways, is it the same, would you say, in filmmaking, in marketing, in output, in outreach, in any skill set that we're trying to build when it comes to business? Like, do we just have to keep going for long enough for them to reap those rewards across time with consistency, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. And I think being present and for a long period of time is, you're establishing yourself as any good brand should and does. But I do think you're being hard on yourself, because you're just one aspect of what might steer you in the direction of success, whatever that looks like for you. You can't control other people's behaviors. You can only control your own. And I think there of course is going to be projects that you've created that might not have necessarily gone where you'd hoped, but there's going to be all these other people that will influence that direction. So I think as long as you're proud of the values that you have and the behaviors that you put into your work, I think that should release you slightly from, let's say it doesn't work out the way that it did. You can always stand back and say, well, I gave it my best shot, and I used the tools that I had to my disposal, and I put my best attitude into that. It's like kids. We say that if they got an E or an ungraded on an exam, if they tried their hardest, that's the important bit. So I do think you should release yourself from some of that stress and blaming yourself for whatever it is that happened last year, because you're just one of billions of people in this world. And I do think we get lost in that a little bit, which is that we, as perfectionists, which a lot of creatives tend to be, imposter syndrome, we come down on ourselves like a ton of bricks, but that's not fair. And it's not, there's many aspects that feed into why something might go the right way or not. And sometimes it is just bloody luck. My Christmas film in 2018 did very well because I was lucky in the way that I worded it, which was the Elton John Lewis Christmas advert. People didn't like it. And so what I said was, off the back of the John Lewis Christmas advert, here's one I made 4 years earlier. So the reason my video, I personally think, went viral is because they didn't like the John Lewis one and they were more receptive to something else. So the whole narrative was, John Lewis, this guy creates a film for 50 quid that rivals John Lewis. There was that story there. I couldn't have dictated and controlled that. And I probably would have put the same type of post out had the video been successful. I wasn't deliberately writing it in that way to say, well, I know it's shit, therefore they're going to love mine. It was just good fortune. So I don't think I could have truly controlled that.
No, and there is market, like to an extent, there is market conditions that do have a perfect storm, right? But the reason why I say luck is in our own control is because we prepare for an opportunity and then we can execute upon the opportunity. So, like flipping it the other way, if you're going to take maybe my point of view on it, I would argue by the fact you had the film and by the fact that you saw the way the I actually remember I wanted the John Lewis advert that you actually questioned or that you're talking about. You maybe, I don't know whether you saw it and that's why you made the post, or whether it was because I don't know timing, but like in a world you could make the argument to say, well, actually you saw the market's reaction and then you went, actually let's put this post out and see what it does. I would say actually that's your preparation towards you so that's your preparation related to the opportunity. So we can't control necessarily the opportunity, sure. No. And that's the element that is lucky. But to give you some more context, and maybe the audience who don't know, in 2024 I was marketing mostly wildlife stuff and etc., which is still a passion and still a good thing. But I wasn't truly focused on who I was serving, right, as a whole, in respect to how I can help you with marketing, how I can help you with video, what's the ROI on video, all these things and these key things. And I think for me, in hindsight, of course it's in hindsight, right, then of course that would then have a knock-on effect to potentially the work I got. But actually, arguably, with that hindsight, I picked up a couple of clients who were in the more nature realm space that I'm still working with today. So actually, I don't regret it in that respect. So I think you have to look back to see what lessons you can learn, but don't hold yourself to this perfectionized constant. I mean, in business we're like constantly known for it. It's like, I turned over X amount this year and I'm going to try and do better next year and I'm going to continue to move forward and forward. And I guess it's at what point would you say then there's more to life, right? Is it just covering your expenses? Is it actually developing a emergency fund or having some investments in building for the future, etc.? Or is it actually down to the person, would you say? Talking about like actually the focus on where we go.
I think it stems back to purpose and having a sense of purpose and feeling that you're adding value back to society. I do feel that we're in an interesting time at the moment where even back at school, we're being fed this idea that we can all be exceptional, and it narrows it down to that one individual. Whereas we are a successful species because we were built on communities, and so what I want to feel in my life is that I contribute. And I get a real sense of purpose from this idea that it's not just about me, it's about how I contribute to society. But going back to what you said about preparation, you nailed it. I was thinking that word preparation and then you said it, because that's all you can do. And it's the same I'm well into my fitness. I used to be a pretty established runner, and training is all about just preparing for that race. I can't necessarily control what the weather conditions are going to be, how I'm going to feel that day. And there's lots of factors I can't control, but I can be very prepared. And again, using that as an analogy, every time I suffered in a race, it meant that the next race, I literally would be able to say to myself, I felt this pain before and I survived. And so I think we can use that in business and all walks of life, which is to say, well, that didn't work out how I thought, but I feel more prepared now for the next time.
Yeah, and I think when you change your mindset around failing, right, and that is your mindset when it comes to potential failure, I think it frees you. For me, like in that scenario with the running scenario.
Yeah, but I also think failure is often dictated by other people, and I think if there was no one around to tell you that it failed or to give you any sense that it failed, I think we wouldn't feel so bad. And so that's why it's important not to measure your success of other people's drivers or what other people are doing in their lives. It should be based on what's relative to you.
Yeah. Do you think that comes from a self-belief, self-esteem, like in here thing? Like, this is more general, this is like not necessarily filmmakers, but do you think that the reason why we look for external validation constantly is that, or maybe that we want a film to go viral, right? But putting it back into our industry, do you think that's why? Like we didn't, there's something we're trying to fix in us.
Potentially, but I think it's because we're taught the wrong lessons. We're taught that success comes in the form of finances and how many likes and subscribes we get and popularity. Whereas if we were fueled this idea that success came from making someone smile, it's just a whole different vibe, isn't it? And that's raw human nature. And I do think we all have it in there, but we're just being fed this dopamine hit constantly, and the need to want to be popular, which is just that again is a human natural thing, an instinct to want to be popular. We want to survive in our community. So I do believe that from an early period in our life, we're taught the wrong lessons.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I think it takes some rewiring sometimes to, and also from speaking personally, like some internal work on why do I look for X or Y from that perspective. And I think you have to take it into two, just maybe lean a little bit back into business. You have to take it from two sides. One is I'll use your example. I'm actually completely cool if this video gets 3 views. I've spent tons of time in it. I'm really proud of it, and I'm not going to tie what I believe to be a successful project on what the internet or the output or etc. actually deems it. So if it gets 3 views, still great project. If it gets 50 million views, still great project. Fabulous, right? And then there's the other side of it, which is like I'm doing it for a client or I'm doing it for myself, which is like, cool, I need it to push a needle somewhere, okay? So I'll give you, I've just picked up live streaming in the last handful of weeks, and I've weaved into what I was already doing into live streaming. So I'll give you an example. A handful of weeks ago, I knew that I got a couple of private texts from a couple of clients that I would call maybe on the fence, right? We don't have any open projects. We've done some projects previously. We're in between projects, etc. Cool. And the part of the text that really stand out to me was like, oh, your videos are really connecting with me, right?
That's cool.
And I was like, okay, hold on. So I don't know what you watched. I don't know where you saw it. I don't have any context at all outside of he watched a video, at least one, and it meant something to him. It connected with him, right? Now, if I'm looking at purely transactionally, that probably means they're more likely to use me in the future, or they're more likely to do a project with me sooner rather than later. Sure. But actually, on a nice level, actually, cool, I just made that guy's day. I made that person's day. I added some value to them. I helped them move forward, or help them pre-context or re-understand something related to the video. And I think for me, when I started really focusing on that bit, how much can I help, how much input can I give without not necessarily expecting anything. Now, it comes from a place of financial planning and financial health, sure. But actually, once you can get there, you can then actually probably make more money. If you're just looking tangibly and that's your objective of success, you can probably make more money by continuing to do that, because you don't have to constantly ask for business, right? I mean, just as I'm aware of times, I think let's wrap up soon, but for people who are maybe listening to this and thinking, okay, I'm going to start creating my own project, I'm going to start creating my own content, where should someone start, would you say?
Well, I mean, we've all got smartphones that are very capable now. We've seen it with 28 years later. Obviously, they had some pretty sexy lenses on it, but it was shot on an iPhone. So we can all be going out and making our own content. But I think in terms of learning, it's important to surround yourself by other creatives who are perhaps further ahead, and go in really hungry with a positive attitude to want to learn, but just to watch and see what's going on. And I think being broad with that as well, and getting a different spread, allows you to understand, well, what is it that I want to be doing and what do I enjoy? But I truly think the best, if you want to be a content creator, you have to create, and you can't sit back and wait. It's on your terms. And I think especially younger people, they've got less ties, perhaps, financial restraints. I think it's a great opportunity to use that time to explore. But it's also being mindful of the fact that you might not figure it out for a long time, but if you imagine there's an infinite number of doors in front of you, all of those doors could be open, but it's up to you to open those doors. You don't have to walk through every door, because that could be careless. But if you're just stood looking at the doors, then that's the bit you can control, is to open those doors and see which is the one that you want to walk through. So, and I know it's a cliche, but I do believe that those, you can have an incredible skill set, but if you're an actual arsehole, people aren't going to want to work with you. But if somebody who knows nothing but has an incredible attitude, I'll remember them. I'll get them back on board. I've done it before. There was somebody who had an incredible attitude, and I put them in front of the right people, and now they're living in London, having an incredible time working on TV commercials. And that was her attitude. That's what mattered to me. So that goes back to what we said before. It's about behaviors and how you feel you can contribute back to other people and make people feel something. And those people as well, they're the ones that are best at selling, because they can sit in a room and it's not about them. It's about, well, how can I want to add value to your life, to your business. And they truly, truly believe it. And the best brands in the world are positioned in that way, which is that they truly add value, and it's on the customer's terms. So that can definitely be taken into, for any young filmmaker or creative. Try to see how you can add value to the person that you're working with or speaking to, and get a mentor as well. That's really helpful. I have a mentor, and he's brilliant. It just helps me to stay fresh, I think, because it's easy to get stuck in your old ways.
No, I completely agree. And I think also, like, giving without expecting a return, and just, I'm going to use the term, like, showing up repeatedly in a good manner. It comes from understanding where you are in your career, A. B, financial planning, right? Like, there's something that I didn't get right in 24 that I am getting right in 25, and that's why I'm in a stronger position, and that's why I can act the way I am. But also understanding the, building it off the marketing sales thing, marketing is for a specific job to give you the permission to sell to someone, and then sales is the ability to add value at a monetary balanced cost to you. So you're adding value to someone, and someone is then rewarding you with a monetary gain. Sure. Right, but what people sometimes get wrong, in my view, is they don't understand what camp they need to stand in most of the time. Because if you're really strong at marketing, you actually can be less strong at sales, or have an easier time selling, because you'll A, have more qualified leads, e.g. people who actually want what you sell, and B, they'll have less questions or less objections, right? And this is where you should know how to objection handle to an extent, but I find it a bit corny where there's a lot of content online going, this is how you objection handle, because that's just about, in my experience at least, pressure selling people, which in turn means they're probably not really going to get the value, and you're going to, like, the fuse on that client is going to be a lot shorter than someone who's consumed your content for say 6 months or 12 months, and then understands completely what value you could add to their business, and then be like, actually no, we're going to give this person like 6 months to before we actually, like, they'll always look at ROI, they'll always look and judge it, sure, but they're going to maybe give them a little bit, like me or you, a longer window to actually add that value, because that's how long it took them to potentially convert, if you want to go down into the business road. But for those people who've enjoyed this conversation, for those people who want to connect with you, want to reach out to you, want to talk to you, want to maybe hire you to do stuff, etc., where's best for people to reach out to you?
Probably the best starting point is to go to my website, which is philbeastall.co.uk. Phil with one L, Beastall's BEASTALL.co.uk.
Magic. And if you were going to talk to yourself 10 to 15 years ago, what advice would you give to that person now?
Chill the F out. Don't want to swear on this. That's the big F bomb. Yeah, just enjoy the ride and stop overthinking. Stop worrying about what other people are going to say. Do what feels good for you, but continue to work hard and show up.
Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me. If you did enjoy this episode and you would like to see more like it, make sure to be subscribed, follow, all those lovely things, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And I'll see you very, very soon.